Independent Bookstore Day Extravaganza with Craig and Karen supporting local bookstores, audiobooks, and more. Join the world of stories. Libro.fm podcast.
Welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Libro.fm Podcast Extravaganza for Independent Bookstore Day. I'm Karen.
And I'm Craig. And the way you said final just made me so sad. I think we should just do one a day forever. Just kidding.
Oh my goodness. I need to read a lot more books if we're going to do that.
Yes. I like that at the end of each episode, we're like, I can only read so many books. Like, how do I have a new one for every day? So it's good that we've been saving up.
Indeed. Do you want to talk a little bit about who we're chatting with today?
I would love to. Today, on the final episode of the Extravaganza, we are talking to the author, Steven Rowley. For listeners, Karen has both of her hands raised in the air with a gigantic smile. You may know Steven Rowley from the Guncle and the Guncle Abroad. I adored the Guncle. Like, this was one of those books that after I read it, I was telling everyone, like, you need to pick up this book. It's so funny. It's so heartwarming. It's relatively short. So it's like a good, like, quick read. Oh, it's so good. So good.
You even recommended this book to Ann Patchett.
That's actually true.
One of our first ever podcast recordings was with Ann Patchett in Parnassus Books, and Craig pointed it out on the shelf and said, you should read that. And she said, oh, I absolutely will. It sounds fantastic.
I mean, how often do you get to recommend a book to Ann Patchett?
Not very often.
Exactly. Once. That's the number.
And you better hope she liked it because you won't get asked again.
Well, I haven't heard from her since, so no, I'm sure she loved it.
Are you going to play a clip for us?
I would love to. Yeah, I'll add a clip from
Great.
Steven Rowley's newest book, and then we will roll the interview. And as always, we will be here at the end to chit chat about books. And between now and then, I'm going to try to read a book really quickly so I have something to talk about.
Well, no, I'm going to ask you a surprise lightning round question at the end. And you get
Excuse me.
no chance to prepare. So I'll see you there.
He was an astronaut, he imagined, like in one of those movies. His mission took him to a distant planet on the far reaches of the solar system. Saturn, perhaps, or Neptune. He was gone a nominal amount of time, 3 years, maybe 5. Significant, but not interminable. But somehow, everyone Jordan Vargas knew on Earth had aged a lifetime while he was in space. Naomi with her readers, struggling to figure out the television's remote as if the technology had eluded her, her irritated face twisted in frustration. Craig, in the kitchen, employing the flashlight on his phone to read takeout menus, muttering the whole time about the Big Sur Retreat's soft, ambient light, while confusing yellow curry with green. What was the difference? Well, the color, yes, obviously, but one had more turmeric? What the hell color is turmeric? Marielle educating them in great detail about the kittens she'd brought for the weekend. They were born without eyes, a condition called microphthalmia, she explained, caused by a genetic mutation that can sometimes result in smaller than usual tongues. And Jordan Tosick, loyal Geordie, his husband and other half, the man who made them the Jordans to so many. Should we invite the Jordans? You don't know the Jordans? We love the Jordans. Geordie's metamorphosis, like Jordan's own, was less shocking, as they'd been together since college and had witnessed each other aging slowly, each having had ample time to adjust to the other's weathering, like the wearing of a beloved chair's upholstery over time.
We are here at the Texas Book Festival with author Steven Rowley, who we saw at a super cool author event on a roof. I saw you there last night, and I was like, that's him. I was like, but I was too scared to go say hello. I'm going to be podcasting with you tomorrow. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Never be too shy to say hello. Come on. Authors, we're weird. We spend most of our lives in a single room typing away quietly. If people want to say hello to us, that's a real treat.
Good to know for
Awesome.
next time.
Well, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with your work, but we'd love if you could give a brief introduction to yourself and kind of what you are up to in the book world.
Sure. I am currently the author of four released. My first novel, Lily and the Octopus, came out in 2016. And that really launched me in a whole new direction in my career. I was coming at novel writing from being a frustrated screenwriter in Los Angeles. And, screenwriting is, you're always waiting for some other level of commitment to come, whether it be financing, a director, an actor,
Sure.
a studio, someone else to say yes. And I was, Lily was a story that came to me. It felt deeply personal. And I didn't frankly want to wait for, forever and ever and ever for the chance that it might get made. And so I decided to write that as a novel. And that sort of kicked off a new career for me. My other novels include The Editor, The Guncle, and this year's The Celebrants.
Awesome.
We'll get right into the Guncle then, since you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Loved this book, much like anyone I know who read it. I remember when I was reading it and I got to the end and I was so sad and I was like, oh my God, I wish there was a sequel. And then didn't hear about one for a while, obviously. And then just recently, there was going to be another one. I've been loving all the photos on Instagram. I think you posted one the other day. Someone took a photo of the book cover in front of the hotel that's on the book cover. So it's getting to be exciting times. Was the sequel always planned? Did you always have that on your mind when you were writing the first one? Or did this kind of it was such a success that you wanted to write another one, or you just missed the characters? How did that come about?
Yeah, no, the original was a very sort of closed-end experience. I was very happy with where I left things. And wasn't always big on the idea of sequels in general. But I have to say, I was truly humbled by the response to that book. And once in a while, just a book sort of has a magical existence, and readers have a special embrace for those characters and for that story. I really started to miss them. It wasn't truly until I went on tour this year for the Celebrants. The Guncle came out in May of 2021. And that was a sort of magical thing in itself, too. The one thing an author has absolutely no control over is the state of the world when their book is released. And to the extent that The Guncle is about a character who is self-isolating in the California desert and finding his way back to the light through sort of inheriting his niece and nephew for the summer, was at a time when people were first getting vaccines and coming out after a very dark year themselves. And it just sort of aligned, I think, with the kind of national mood in a strange way.
Yeah, thank God for that pandemic.
Yeah. Well, let's not go that far. But, I really did. People ask me, when you write a book, do the characters sort of stay with you after you're done writing? And for me, it wasn't Patrick so much the main character of that book. It was the kids. It was those kids who had lost their mom and they'd gone to live with their uncle for the summer. And I started to think, are they okay? Because at the end of that book, they go home back to Connecticut, and to a home where that's empty, almost.
Yeah.
Their mom's not going to be there. And I always wondered in the back of my mind, how are those kids doing? So the sequel comes along. It's 5 years later. They're not quite as cute and cuddly as they were. They're 11 and 14 now.
Oh, no.
But it was fun to write them again after having Patrick's influence on them for 5 years now, because they know how to sass back. They know how they know his sort of language and his, how to joke with him and kid him and push his buttons in a fun and interesting way.
Oh, I love that.
So excited.
When we were talking about, we asked our colleagues, do you have any questions for Steven? And one of the questions that came up is, where did the inspiration for Gay Uncle Patrick come from? And they wanted to know if he was based on anybody. And they were like, if he was in a movie, I think it would be Neil Patrick Harris would play him and all that. So,
yeah. I think that's the number one question I get is, am I Patrick? And I like to say, there is probably more than any other character I've written a lot of crossover between the two of us. I mean, I think we do have similar senses of humor. That comes from somewhere. The book is deeply heartfelt, but hopefully it's also very funny.
Yeah.
And I think it's, it's a real challenge sort of to be able to joke as an entirely different character. And so we kept our senses of humor sort of similar. And that helped. He's a little sadder than I am. He's been through some things. Unfortunately, I haven't. He's also has more money than I do. He's worked in television, which pays more than publishing. He's a little younger. So I was like, he's the younger, slightly better looking, fatter bank account version of me.
I love that when we do a thing at the end of the episode where we ask you about an Instagram post. So we were looking at your Instagram and I saw you had like a closet full of caftans, and I was like, oh,
It's true.
Yeah.
People send them to me now, which is
That's amazing.
just mind blowing to think about. But I'm gonna have to be very careful about what I write into books in the future. First of all, when I went on tour with my book, The Editor, which came out in 2019, the characters in that book drink an old fashioned sort of 1950s daiquiri, not the woohoo blended spring break daiquiri, but like a classic rum and lime juice and whatnot. And so everywhere I went on tour, people would hand me a daiquiri. And so, and that's not really my favorite drink. So I was like, okay, I want to be very careful about what drinks I write into
Your
books
next
in the
character
future.
is all things you want.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And then, fortunately I wasn't, unfortunately too, but in this regard, I wasn't able to tour with the Guncle. Events were all still Zoom.
Yeah.
Bookstores were just sort of coming back from a difficult year. And so, but I was actually relieved because everything that Patrick drinks in the Guncle is, a mimosa with just a whisper of orange juice, a martini. The closest he wants to be to a bottle of vermouth is just looking at it from across the room. So I was like, thank goodness I didn't get to tour for this book because I would have been hammered, like everywhere I went. But the caftan started coming out of the woodwork. And so I was like, I'm going to have to make sure I put products in
I know.
future books for
Yes.
sponsorship opportunities.
Like, this character loved gold bars.
Yeah, exactly.
That is some of the best advice we've
why
gotten
didn't
on the
I
podcast.
think of that? Yeah.
I would love to boast about you for a moment. I saw that your work is now published in 20 different languages, which is incredible. And also that all of your books are in development for feature film or TV adaptations. What has it been like to see your work become so widespread globally and coming out in different formats? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it really is mind-boggling to think about the sort of different languages and how widespread it is around the world. Because I write what I think are sort of deeply personal and honest experiences, and even as a writer, you don't even expect one reader sometimes to find it. And the fact that some of these books have been translated around the world, it leads to a interesting challenge of the work. For instance, how do you translate Guncle in Polish or Portuguese or something,
Yep.
so we get a quick call sometimes like, listen, we may need to swap out the title. There's not one that necessarily works. So that's always an interesting challenge, but getting those different book covers and from different countries around the world and, populating the shelf in my office is really special. But here I am, right back as a frustrated screenwriter, waiting and waiting and waiting.
Are you doing
for
the
these
screenwriting for these?
I have for some, I have not for others.
Sure.
Lily in particular was a book, as I said, since I wrote it, coming from a place where I was feeling frustrated with screenwriting, I deliberately broke every screenwriting rule I could think of in writing it, thinking gleefully, like, ha ha ha, they'll never be able to adapt this. And sure enough, I was fortunate enough to have a studio come calling, and so I had to tap out. I was, I'm actually not your guy to do this. I broke all the rules. I don't know how to fix it.
You set yourself up.
Yeah, I set myself up for failure with that one. So, but some of the others I'm more involved in. Again, another difficult year. Hollywood, we had both the writer's strike and the actor's strike. The actor's strike just settled this past week. So hopefully we can get the ball rolling going on some of these projects.
How does the involvement on your end look when the translation projects come along? Like, that's so fascinating. I never thought about, oh yeah, how do you say Guncle in, French type of thing?
Yeah. Sadly, I mean, I speak a little French, but I couldn't read the book in French from cover to cover. So, it gets sent to me for my approval. And I'm like,
Looks good.
yeah, looks good to me. Oui, oui.
Is that the little bit of French?
Yeah, that's a little
That's
bit of
it.
French.
Yeah. So you narrate your own books.
Mhm.
This we've interviewed a ton of authors, and that is very unusual for fiction. Most people we ask, they go like, "Oh my God, no, I can't do that. I would
Absolutely
never want to
not.
hear my own voice." Blah blah blah. And we interviewed Abraham Verghese yesterday, and he narrated his recent fiction book as well. And he actually went through like an interview process. Like, so his publishing company had like 3 people they liked, and he was like, "Let me audition too." So he did. And that is not what I expected. I kind of just assumed he could be like, "Yeah, I'm doing it." And I'm curious, what has the process been like for you with narration?
Well, I'm surprised to say that Abraham and I have a lot in common in that regard too. I would have been surprised with how that book was received, that he would have been a natural choice. I too also had to to audition.
Really?
I don't think the publisher thought it was a great idea. I was very fortunate to have brilliant actor Michael Urie do my first 2 audiobooks, and it's always a little bit fraught. Or it is for me anyway. When you write a book, it's yours and yours alone in your head for so long. And then to hear someone else interpret it, it can be a little jarring. In my head, if I go up and then he goes down. And by the way, it's an actor's job to interpret the text. They should do a different performance, a different reading of it than the one that's sort of locked in place in your brain. For the Guncle, though, Michael was not available. I was sent a bunch of different audition tapes, and the humor was, though, something that I thought was very important to land, and I just wasn't hearing it in these tapes, and so I thought, I wonder if I could take a stab at it. So I was like, I called my agent. He was like, yeah, let's ask. But absolutely, I had to audition. I had to send a tape of myself in.
Wow.
That's
reading. Tape is so old fashioned. I had to record myself and send a digital file. Fortunately, it went my way. The interesting thing with the Celebrants, it got to be very late in the process. I was like, hey, when are we gonna, listen to some potential narrators here? And they're like, oh, we just assumed you're doing it. And I'm like, oh no, wait a minute. So I don't know that I will always do it.
Yeah.
I suppose I'll do the sequel again.
Yeah,
but
I can't stand when a sequel or a trilogy or whatever has like different narrators.
Yeah.
Like, that
Okay,
voice
that's
now
good to
becomes
know. We shouldn't change
Yeah.
midstream. But sometimes the performer in me gets upset with the actor in me. I thought I was so brilliant in the Guncle because I gave one of the children a lisp. And I thought that'll help me as a writer, not having to tag every piece of dialogue. I won't have to
Right.
write Maisie said, Grant said, he said, she said. It'll be clear which child is talking. But then it came time to perform that, for the audiobook. It's like, son of a bitch, who did this?
You're the king of setting yourself up.
Yeah,
It seems like.
God, I don't know what I did to myself in a past life. But
Now you're gonna have to do it all again.
yeah.
Well, it's a great transition into talking about the Celebrants, which you
Mhm.
mentioned, which came out in May of this year, I believe.
Yes.
Congratulations. For our listeners that haven't had a chance to read it yet, we were wondering if you could give a quick synopsis of what this one's about.
Yeah, it's about a group of 5 college friends who make a pact right before graduation. They lose one of their own to suicide on the sort of eve of graduation. And after attending his funeral, they sort of think to themselves, if only they could have heard all the wonderful things said about him that day, that maybe it might have given him hope or reason to continue. And so they make this pact to reunite at each of their lowest moments in life. Because they're about to scatter to the wind. They don't know what life has in store for them. They'll reunite and throw each other their funeral while they're still alive to hear and benefit from it. Of course, no one really thinks that someone will actually trigger this pact, but life then intervenes. Yeah.
That's such a good teaser for your book. I love this book. And, Craig and I, in preparing to meet with you, were talking about how, obviously your work is laugh out loud funny, but dealing with some very heavy topics like grief,
Mhm.
loss. What do you hope people take away from reading your book?
Yeah, when people ask me, oh, what do you write? I'm sometimes tempted to say very funny books about grief and grieving. And I don't know why I keep returning to that theme other than I think this country is very bad at it. I think that it's something that we think is a burden on other people, and we tend to shut ourselves away, not wanting to be that burden. I think we're good about talking about it, and yet it is such a universal or uniting experience in the human experience. And so I wish more people would be open and talk about it. So hopefully through these stories, we can learn to lean on each other a little bit more. But humor has always been the way through for me. I think there's, a lot of conversation happening, particularly amongst writers, other artists too, about how we're going to address the past few years that we've been through. And listen, Elizabeth Strout is one of my favorite writers. She wrote a book called Lucy by the Sea, which is really like a TikTok of 2020, like a moment by moment retelling and rehashing of the year 2020. And I read that book and I'm like, I'm absolutely not ready to go back there. So directly, brilliant writer, beautifully written, the agita I had from reading that book, though. And, in the Celebrants, I conveniently skipped the years sort of 2019 to 2023. However, the theme of telling the people in your lives what they mean to you now while you can is absolutely, I think, a response to the past few years, because we've all lost a lot, and it may not be an individual, it may not be a person in our lives, but we've lost time, and we've lost the ability to be together for some of the past few years. So I do think the Celebrants is just that, a celebration of true friendship and being able to be there for one another.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful.
I know. I feel like I should add a joke at the end. But
Well, don't worry. Here we go.
Surprises coming.
Okay.
So my next question is about a bidet. So this is self-serving. I love the bidet scene in the Guncle.
In the Guncle, yeah.
Yes. For people that may not have read it, basically, he tells one of the kids like look into the bidet and then turns it on and it splashes him in the face, and I was cracking up. And I just need to know, is this based on any real life scenario? Like, where did you come up with this idea? Because it's amazing.
No, that sadly, well, people will send me caftans. No one has sent me a $20,000 Japanese commode yet. That is where apparently people draw the line. No, that was complete imagination, but it really made me feel for writers sort of in the thriller or suspense genre, or like, because for instance, I did a lot of research. I'm reading Consumer Reports on the best, toilets worldwide and so like you start Googling something for so long. This is why I was thinking of the thriller writer, because I'm like, what happens if you Google like how to dispose a body? Because then suddenly my entire feed is for high-end bathroom porcelain product. I was like, oh my God, the internet thinks I'm a toilet fetishist. But
thriller writers are getting like ads on Instagram for like sharp knives.
Yes,
and stuff,
yeah, and I'm getting heated toilet seats. Who knows? But it was great fun to write. I get a little squeamish, I think, about bathroom humor, but I know like for kids, the kids in that book are 6 and 9, like that's right in their wheelhouse. So I'm like, how am I going to create some bathroom humor and do it in a slightly higher class kind of way? So I was like, the humor will come from the bidet itself.
I love it.
Well, Steven, congratulations. You've made it to our lightning round, in which Craig and I will ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and don't think about them too hard.
What happened? I mean, like, I'm afraid there's a trap door in the floor that's
It's
open up.
now.
If I get one wrong, okay, buckle up.
Would you rather never have coffee again or never have your favorite food again?
Oh, that's cruel. I will say never have my favorite food again. Without coffee, books would not exist.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And follow up, what is your favorite food?
Oh, goodness. I would say sushi.
Good answer.
Sushi, yeah.
Yep.
Although I live in the California desert. I live in Palm Springs. So I always like wonder, like, it's 110 degrees outside. Like, get it to the table quickly. Yeah.
How would your best friend describe you?
Oh, goodness. Hopefully, if you like my books, that if you respond to the tone of my books, that's very much, hopefully, in line with who I am. So
Awesome.
I think readers, I think readers know who I am, too.
I love that.
Or I hope they do.
So you show up to an occasion, and would you rather be underdressed or very overdressed?
Would I rather be in a caftan or
Black tie.
I would rather be overdressed. I would rather be overdressed. But there are people who are disappointed when I show up wearing pants, because they're so convinced that I'm going to be in a caftan because of the Guncle. Yeah. I was like, no, I do actually own clothes.
The last one that I added, right when you sat down, what is your iPhone photo background?
Oh my goodness. It's one of my dogs. Yeah. It's my dog. While she's getting belly rubbed. So she's on her back and her mouth is open in complete bliss. Yeah.
What is your dog's name?
I have 2, Raindrop and Shirley.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Raindrop.
It's too much. It's too much. That's why when we got a second dog, I was like, what do you pair with rain? It can't be like Snowflake. Like it can't be too, we can't double down on the cutesy. So it's be like Raindrop and Jeff or something, So Shirley, when Shirley came from the rescue organization with the name Shirley, I was like, done. We're done. That's perfect.
Love it. Our last question for you before we start to ask you for book recommendations, we call it Instagram story time, where we comb through your Instagram, find a photo, and ask for a elaborated story of it.
Okay.
Your Instagram is so fun, by the way.
We had a great time
I'm
selecting that.
I'm jealous of
I'm like,
having
how deep a dive did you go?
We went
Okay.
we went back
pretty
to
far back.
May of 2019 actually for
Okay,
this one.
that's fine. Yeah.
And I selected this photo because I could just tell this is something that you cherish. It's a picture of a very well-worn copy of Wheats You Bet
Mhm.
by Francesca Block. And I was wondering if you could tell us the story behind why you love this book. And it sounds like you also met the author.
Yeah, it was a book that was handed to me at the exact moment that I needed it in college. And isn't that the way the books that become our favorite resonate with us, not just because of the book itself, I think, but because of the moment in our lives when we read it. The intersection of those two things, I think, is what makes a book really stick with us. And absolutely, that was placed in my hand. As I was coming out and feeling that the world was kind of a dark place. This was 1992, I think. Now I'm aging myself, but I was convinced at the time that life would be relatively short and something that would be kind of sad and lonely. And here was this little queer book that was full of joy and poetry and exuberance, and it just lifted me up when I needed that. And I'm very happy to say that conversely, that life for me has been full of community and very joyous and comparatively long to what I was worried about in those dark days in the early 90s. And so I did get to sit down with Francesca after I published my first book, and that was, she had invited me to lunch because I had made a post about it, or I can't remember now. A mutual friend was able to introduce us, and we sat down to lunch, and I was able to tell the author, what that book had done for me. But it's a lovely lesson to me in writing too. I try to take what I responded to in that book and apply it to my own writing. There's a real lightness on the page, and there's real poetry in the prose, and it's sort of it feels very free flowing, and that's where I try to draw inspiration from in my own writing.
That's so
beautiful. Sorry, Abraham, I'm not going to write a 900-page book ever. I don't think I have it in me, but I'm glad we have other things in common.
Yeah. And our last question that we ask every author that comes on the podcast is, what are you currently reading? Or if it's not current, what do you recommend to us and our listeners?
I just finished The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. I was very fortunate enough earlier this year to win the Thurber Prize for American Humor for the Guncle. And James had won the year prior to me for Deacon King Kong. And so anybody who uses humor in a very clever way, in a way that's really integral to the characters, is a writer that I love, and he's one that's right at the top of my list.
We had him on the podcast, and it was amazing. Like,
I can only imagine. Yeah. Can you introduce us?
Yeah, floored us.
Yeah, but now ever since having won the Thurber, my agent and my editor are always like, well, what's the next book? Is it going to be funny? What's fun? Where's the funny? Where's the humor? And I was wondering if he got that same pressure, like, okay, the grocery store, is it funny? Do they sell funny things? Does the food taste funny? Like, where's the funny?
It's not that funny.
Pretty heavy book.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Steven, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I'm sure it's been busy at the larger festival. Conference sounds way too serious.
Oh no, this is a joy. Right? It can feel like a very solitary experience a lot of the time. So to get to come to these festivals and meet not only people who love books and readers, but some other authors as well that we may be fans of, or just the sense that we have colleagues and we can talk and meet and gossip and all that. It's so much fun.
Well, we have had a blast too, so thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, we did it. That concludes the extravaganza. And what a great note to go out on.
Yes. How are you feeling about it now that it is over? Do you think we'll do this again next year, or was this your one and only extravaganza?
Oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next one. Are you kidding? We just get to talk to authors we love and learn all of their secrets via lightning round and become their friends. This is a dream. Yes.
Next year, 2 a day. Got it. That's what I heard.
All right. So we are, as this is being launched, we are coming up on Independent Bookstore Day. My lightning round question for you is what are you going to do to celebrate this year? And is there a specific book that you know you're going to get?
Ooh, I don't know if there's a specific book that I'm looking for, but my go-to every year IBD plan is to go to as many bookstores as I can. So I don't just go to, like, if you're a listener of this podcast, you know, the Brookline Booksmith is my bookstore of choice because it is downstairs from where I'm currently sitting. So it's so convenient and it's also lovely. But on IBD, I go to as many as I can. And I am so lucky. I live in Boston and we have so many amazing independent bookstores, Porter Square Books, Brookline Booksmith, Trident Books. Like, I could list probably 10 bookstores that I am absolutely in love with in this city. So I try to go to as many as I can, and I buy at least one book at each to, you know, support and, you know, get more books. Yeah, so no like specific plans or books, but just go out and support as much as I can, and, you know, see the booksellers I love, and that's it. Yeah, I'll
Beautiful.
throw it back at you. What's your plan for Independent Bookstore Day?
Oh my gosh. I mean, pretty much the same thing. I like to sleep in a lot on the weekends, but Independent Bookstore Day is one of those rare exceptions where I wake up and I'm so excited and I can't wait to get ready and get out the door. It's like Christmas. So I'm going to get up early and start my tour through Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. I will be going to Blackstone Books in Ypsilanti. I will go to Book Suite and Literati and Schuler Books in Ann Arbor. Who knows? The sky's the limit. How far can my car go? I'm gonna go to bookstores there.
The Upper Peninsula is the limit. I love it.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I could get there in time, but
So exciting. So now that we are done with the extravaganza, Independent Bookstore Day is tomorrow.
yeah,
So we better stop recording and get to sleep so we can get up bright and early.
I'm making my book list already. I'm ready.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, everyone. Whether you listen to one episode or all 4/5, we appreciate it. It means the world to us. So if you don't follow the podcast, you should consider it. We do this all the time. If you do, please give us a rating. It's super helpful.
And last but not least, if you use the promo code SWITCH right now to sign up for a new membership, you will get 3 audiobook credits for your first month of membership instead of just 1. That is a huge deal that we do very, very rarely. So now is a great time to consider signing up. And as always,
Thank you for listening.
Independent Bookstore Day Extravaganza with Craig and Karen supporting local bookstores, audiobooks, and more.